Panama, with more than 98% of the votes, Jose Raul Mulino has clear lead in Sunday's general elections. In Brazil, the death toll after strong floods in the state of Rio Grande do Sul rose to 83. In Palestine, the Israeli occupation army urged the evacuation of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian residents and displaced settled in eastern Rafah. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Panama, candidate Jose Raul Mulino is the president-elect after leading in the May 5th elections. After more than 98% of the votes were counted, candidate Jose Raul Mulino is the virtual president-elect, accounting for over 34% of votes, followed by the candidate of the Otro Camino movement, Ricardo Lobana, who accumulated more than 24%, and in third place, the former president Martin Torrijos for the Popular Party with around 16%. More than 3 million Panamanians exercised their right to vote in more than 3,000 voting centers, where they also elected the 81 district mayors, 701 township representatives, 11 councilmen, 71 deputies to the National Assembly, and 20 to the Central American Parliament.
It falls on my shoulders, and that of my family, the greatest responsibility that any Panamanian can have, or feel, to lead the destiny of the Panamanian nation starting next July 1st. That is a gigantic task, in a situation where the most important thing of this political campaign was to identify myself with that feeling, and that clamor of the irreducible majorities of the country that trusted in our proposal because they had hopes of getting out of the hole in which the last 10 years have put them.
In addition, Panama's president-elect Jose Raul Mulino said he will promote a pro-investment and pro-private enterprise government.
We will promote a pro-investment, pro-private enterprise government. We cannot forget those who are hungry, those who have a job, and those who need drinking water throughout the country every day. These are very big challenges, but we will face the challenges with decision and leadership, which is what this country lacks.
Let's see more information about President-elect Jose Raul Mulino, representative of the parties realizando metas and alianza. Mulino replaced former President Ricardo Martinelli in the general elections due to his disqualification for a sentence of more than 10 years for the crime of money laundering. During Martinelli's government, Jose Raul Mulino was Minister of Security and of Government and Justice in the term 2009-2014. Likewise, in 2015, he was in prison for allegedly committing crimes against public administration. In Guatemala, President Bernardo Arevalo assured that the mandate of the country's Attorney General Consuelo Porras must end, as she misused her post to persecute him and the Semilla Party in an attempt against the presidential transition.
The dark cycle of Consuelo Porras must end right away. As President of the Republic, directly elected by the people with an explicit mandate to fight for transparency and combat corruption, I cannot put up with this injustice to continue.
In that regard, the Guatemalan head of state announced that on Sunday he presented to Congress a legal reform that would allow to oust the Attorney General.
I decided to present to the Congress of the Republic an initiative to reform the organic law of the public ministry, which will open the way for the Attorney General to be accountable to the people of Guatemala and their representatives, and to be removed from her position within the framework of the law.
In Brazil, 83 people have died after floods caused by a strong storm in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. 4 other deaths are also under investigation, and 111 missing persons and 276 injured have been reported to date. The Civil Defense note also indicates that there are 141,300 people away from home in the households or families. In total, 345 of the 496 municipalities registered some kind of problem affecting 850,000 people. According to weather authorities, the advance of the new cold front causes an increase in the conditions of heavy rains and the possibility that this increase may hinder rescues. In this context, President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva assured that the federal government has intensified actions to assist those affected by the rains and reconstruction in Rio Grande do Sul after the rainfall that affected the state. Earlier, the president flew over the affected areas accompanied by a delegation of ministers to define resources and extraordinary measures to recover the state after natural disaster. Lula also pointed out that immediate humanitarian aid will be distributed to all those affected. In this regard, the Brazilian president posted the following on his X account, and I quote, I am a man who truly believes in God, so I made my team of ministers available for this trip. I also called representatives of other branches of power, so it was necessary to see things up close, as we are doing here, to understand the magnitude of what's happened and to help the people of the southern region. Meanwhile, in the United States, heavy rainfall has intensified, causing flooding of homes and roads in the severely affected city of Houston, Texas. A flood warning remained in effect throughout the weekend for several locations in southeast Texas as authorities conducted search and rescue efforts. Among the victims was a child who died near Fort Worth when the vehicle he was riding in with two adults got swept away in floodwater. Heavy rain has increased by Monday. Still, according to forecasts from the National Weather Service, moderate to major river flooding will remain a concern in the area through the next several days.
Oh, the water come up. I moved up the hill. I moved everything out of down there. Okay. I moved my camper up there, and I've been staying at my friend's house.
Let's now take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Israeli occupation army urged the evacuation of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian residents and displaced people settled in eastern Rafah. The army issues a call order to the people of the districts of Al-Salam, Al-Jenaina, Tabet, Zera, and Al-Bayuk to immediately evacuate and head to Al-Mawasi. The announcement comes after a night of heavy shelling on multiple homes in Rafah, in the southern Gaza Strip. Palestinian officials say that so far all evacuation zones designated by the Israeli army have come under constant attack, whether in western Khan Yunis or Rafah, where 1.5 million people are sheltering. The calls to evacuate come in the wake of failed negotiations in Cairo and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's insistence on extending the ground invasion into Rafah city. In this context, the United Nations Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, condemned the possible Israeli ground operation in Rafah, south of the Gaza Strip. Through its account on X, the agency pointed out that an Israeli offensive in Rafah would mean more suffering and civilian death, highlighting that the consequences would be devastating for 1.4 million people. Precisely, the statement assured that the agency will maintain its presence in Rafah for as long as possible and will continue to provide vital assistance to the people. Meanwhile, at least 22 people were killed after several Israeli airstrikes on residential buildings in the city of Rafah. In this sense, Wafa news agency reported that as a result of Israeli bombardments targeting 11 homes in Rafah, the occupation army also killed 8 children. Precisely, among the martyrs, there was only a 5-day-old newborn who died along with his parents. These genocidal attacks took place in the midst of the 213th day of Israel's ongoing criminal war. According to health officials, 34,683 Palestinians have been killed since October 7th, most of them children and women, while more than 78,000 have been wounded. The United Nations Agency for Palestine Refugees denounced that the Israeli authorities prevented the agency from entering Gaza for the second time since the beginning of the Israeli genocide against Gaza. The head of the UN body, Philippe Lazzarini, said to have traveled to Gaza 4 times since the war began last October 7th, adding that since mid-March, Israel has not allowed him to pass into the Palestinian territory. Lazzarini reported more than 10 attacks on convoys and threats with long weapons against UN personnel transporting supplies to the Gaza Strip in the last few weeks. UNRWA demanded an independent investigation into the rocket fire that led to the closure of a key crossing point for humanitarian aid between Israel and Gaza. The United Nations also strongly opposed the Israeli government's decision to close the Al Jazeera television network, considering it a direct violation of press freedom. The organization's spokesman, Stefan Dujarric, stressed that a free press provides an invaluable service in informing and interacting with the public. The Israeli government unanimously authorized the closure of Al Jazeera's operations in the country after passing a law in parliament that allows for temporary closure of foreign media that are considered a threat to national security. And in Qatar, the Al Jazeera television network condemned the decision of the Israeli government, headed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to close the media outlets' offices in Israel. In an official statement, Al Jazeera's offices said Al Jazeera Media Network strongly condemns and denounces this criminal act that violates human rights and the basic rights to access to information. Al Jazeera affirms that its rights to continue to provide news and information to its global audiences. Al Jazeera also said in the statement the network vehemently rejects the allegations made by the Israeli authorities, suggesting that professional media standards have been violated. It reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the values embodied in its code of ethics. Finally, the television station remarked the network will seek all available legal channels through international legal institutions in its quest to protect both its rights and those of journalists, as well as the public's right to information. Attacking journalists is a crime. In Bangladesh, thousands of students rallied in the capital Dhaka in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza and with pro-Palestinian student protests around the world. The massive demonstration was called by the ruling Awami League Party's student wing. It follows similar rallies held by university students worldwide calling for an immediate ceasefire and the entry of humanitarian aid to Gaza. Bangladeshi students condemned the strong repression and arbitrary arrest of their counterparts in U.S. university campuses. Demonstrators also called for the Israeli government to be held accountable for its actions in Gaza.
From Columbia University to Tulane University, from the City University of New York to the University of California, students defy intimidation and repression, demanding divestment from the arms that fuel the machinery of oppression and genocide.
The way the Israeli forces are conducting atrocities upon the general people of Palestine, starting from the children to the women, the way they are bombing the women, the children, and the hospitals, the way they are conducting aggression, the way they are occupying the Palestinian land, it's completely against humanity. We are here today to protest against these crimes against humanity.
In other news, in Iran, President Ebrahim Raisi met Monday with Kurdistan Region President Nishirvan Barzani as he kicked off his high-level meetings in the capital Tehran. The two leaders discussed Iran and Erbil's historic ties, venues for increased cooperation, regional security, and the need to fully implement the security pact between Iraq and Iran and complete the disarmament of Kurdish exile groups in the border areas. The Iranian president stated that Barzani's trip will be a turning point in improving the level of political security, economic and cultural relations. This is Barzani's 5th trip to Iran in 10 years. He last visited the Islamic Republic in August 2021 to attend Raisi's inauguration. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. Presidential elections are held in Chad on Monday, with some 8.5 million citizens being called upon to choose between 10 candidates. Among contenders for the position of head of state are the current head of the Transitional Military Council, Mahamad Idris Deby Itno, and the incumbent Prime Minister, Success Masra. The various polling stations set up throughout the country will receive more than 8 million voters between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. local time. The authorities have announced that the results of the referendum will be announced on June 21st, and that if a second round is necessary, it will be held on June 22nd. In Germany, hundreds gathered in front of the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin to reject the recent attacks and aggressions against politicians during election campaigns. The large demonstration occurs following Friday's hospitalization of Matthias Ecke, Social Democratic deputy and candidate to the European elections next June 9th. Authorities stressed that the aggression was perpetrated by a group of 20-year-olds from the far right who beat the politician with blunt objects. In the early hours of Sunday morning, police confirmed that a 17-year-old young man turned himself in to the authorities after confessing his involvement in the attack.
It is simply important to me to do something about the fact that this hatred is flooding people, dominating people and everything. That simply cannot be allowed to happen. That's what we want to express here.
I think we are seeing in very concrete terms that the climate is drifting further and further away. Hatred and hate speech are the order of the day, and politicians are also on the rise. And far-right voices are also playing a big part in this. The rhetoric they use, both in their speeches and on social media, is fueling this climate. And as a civil society, we have to stand up to this and say not with us.
On his visit to France, President of China Xi Jinping described Beijing's ties with Paris as an international model of peaceful coexistence in a context of escalating trade aggressions by the European Union. President Xi Jinping arrived Sunday in Paris as part of his tour through Europe, in addition to celebrating the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between both nations. In that regard, the Chinese government stated that this visit is an opportunity to strengthen political trust, improve cooperation, and take the comprehensive strategic partnership to a new level. The goal of China is to boost dialogue with allied nations amid escalating financial aggressions from Western countries. The Belém and the Olympic Flame continue their journey across the Mediterranean, sailing off the coast of Corsica. The Flame will arrive in Marseille on May 8th. The Olympic Flame began Saturday its journey to France on board the historic ship leaving the Greek port of Piraeus after spending the night at the French embassy in Athens. The event organizers want to ensure the biggest event in the world plays an accelerating role in addressing the crucial questions of our time.
I'd never have imagined that I'd be able to collect the Flame and return to the Belém. It's really incredible, a unique event. I don't think I'll ever forget it.
And dozens of Mexicans gather in the country's capital for the reenactment of the Battle of Puebla in its 162th anniversary. Dressed in costumes representing soldiers from both sides, the people of the neighborhood San Juan de Aragon in Mexico City commemorate the clash between Mexican and French troops in 1862. The reenactment of the Battle of May 5th is part of the cultural identity of the town inhabitants, a cause for celebrating the resilience of Mexicans and their triumph over the better equipped and higher number of French troops. The battle reenactment has become an activity that is passed from generation to generation.
My father was this character for 29 years. He died 3 years ago as a result of the pandemic, and I inherited the role with great pride, with great joy, but above all also with a lot of nostalgia and remembering his name.
The Commonwealth of Dominica held on Sunday the 13th edition of the Jazz and Creole Festival, one of the most important events of its kind in the Eastern Caribbean. The great musical event was held at Fort Shirley, Cabrit's National Park in Portsmouth, and was attended by Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit and other prominent figures from the world of national and international politics. The festival was held on the theme Creole Fusion, and combine native traditions with a festive style in costumes with typical elements of the island and a modern colorful touch. Dominica has subscribed its adhesion to the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America People's Trade Treaty on January 26, 2008. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.